This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, I'll call the meeting to order, and I'd like to note we have a special guest here. We've got Alicia visiting, and I forget now, Alicia, what's your baby's name?
Eva.
Eva, yes, and special guest, Eva. So it's good to see you too, part of the team, and it's good to see you here. So we do have quorum, and I'll start with the land acknowledgement. As we gather, we recognize and acknowledge the traditional keepers of this land with whom we share today. The township of Southgate is part of traditional territories of the Anishishbak, Six Nations of the Grand River, Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, Haudenosaunee, and Saugeen Métis. The land that surrounds us is part of who we are. Just to go with this, at Good Roads, there was a speaker from Saskatchewan, and he talked about reconciliation and land acknowledgements and that type of things. And his big message was, let's make relationships and get along. That's what he considered it all. So just to add to that, so it was a very inspiring talk that he gave. Do we have anyone registered for open forum?
Mayor Woodbury, I did have one person register, but I don't see them on the line here.
Okay.
So I'm wondering if that person does join a little bit later on, if council's amendable to let them speak at that time, but I don't see them on the line right now. There's no other callers or anything.
No. Okay. Whoops, I just rearranged things so that I could see better, and I lost my spot here. So a confirmation of the agenda, we have moved by Jason and seconded by Michael. And Lindsay, you wanted to make an amendment?
Yeah, if I could, Mayor Woodbury, I just would like to make an amendment to pull staff report. It's number 9.1.1, HR Coordinator Caleb Best, HR 2022-013, the CIO hiring. I just would like to pull that from the agenda.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion on the agenda? Barbara?
Just a question through you to the clerk. Is it pulled, deferred, and if it's deferred, till when?
As of right now, Councillor Dobryn, we're going to defer it until April 27th, if not a sooner date.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Not seeing any other hands up. Is anyone opposed to the motion? Okay, that is carried. If there's any declarations of interest, you can declare now or at any time. We don't have any delegations today. And we can go on to adoption of the minutes, which is moved by, did I see Jim here? I haven't seen Jim.
No, I haven't seen Councillor Frew or Deputy Mayor Milne join yet, so we'll just have to make some amendments to the movers and seconders.
Okay, I know the Deputy Mayor was in another meeting, and I think he'll be here as soon as he can wrap that up. So, so I need a mover. Martin's a seconder. A mover for adoption of the minutes. Jason? Okay. Any discussion? And those are the minutes from April 6th. Okay, seeing none. Is anyone opposed? Okay, and that's carried. Municipal officers, we'll go to 9.2.1, Liam's, and that is the move by Barbara, Jason, and that's the fees and charges report. Liam? No.
Yeah, so at the last meeting of council, there were 2 fee updates directed to bring forward for the library, elimination of late fees, and for the new OPP false alarm charge. And since I brought those forward, the fire chief has asked for a minor modification to the wording in the fire schedule. So I've made that as well.
Okay, thank you. Questions or comments? Not seeing any. Is anyone opposed to this motion? Okay, that is carried. And next, it's the bylaw. Let's see, got it here. Michael seconder, I need a mover. Martin? Any discussion on the bylaw? Okay, not seeing any. Lindsay, if you would do the vote.
Thank you, Mayor Woodbury. Vote for bylaw 22-047, charges, schedules B, J, and P. Councillor Dobryn,
In favor?
Councillor Shearson,
Yes.
Councillor Frew is absent. Deputy Mayor Milne, are you on the line?
Yes, I am, and I will vote in affirmative for that motion.
Thank you. Mayor Woodbury,
In favor?
Councillor Rice,
Yes.
Councillor Shipston.
Yes.
By a vote of 6-0, that's carried.
Thank you. Thanks, Liam. Appreciate your work on that. Next, we have some of Lindsay's reports, 9.3.1, which is the use of corporate resources during election, and that's moved by Barbara, seconded by Jason. Did you want to add anything to that, Lindsay?
Not a whole lot, Mayor Woodbury. It's all just kind of outlined there in the report. I didn't make a lot of changes from the 2018 policy. There was no point really reinventing the wheel, so this should be familiar for everybody.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments? All right, not seeing any. Is anyone opposed to this motion? That's carried. Next, we have the bylaw to go with it, and that's moved by Brian and seconded by Michael. Any discussion on the bylaw? Okay, Lindsay, I'll get you to do the vote, please.
Thank you, Mayor Woodbury. Recorded vote on bylaw 2022-052 to adopt policy number 70, the use of corporate resources during an election. Councillor Rice,
Yes.
Councillor Shipston,
Yes.
Mayor Woodbury,
Yes.
Councillor Shearson,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Milne,
Yes.
Councillor Dobryn,
In favor?
and Councillor Frew is absent. So by a vote of 6-0, that is carried.
Okay, thank you. Next is the municipal election recount policy approval. And that is moved by Martin, and we need a seconder. Barbara, anything on this one, Lindsay?
No, Mayor Woodbury, same thing here. I didn't actually make any changes at all to this policy, so should be familiar again. Just approving before the May 1st deadline.
All right, questions or comments? Okay, is anyone opposed to this motion? That is carried. And now we have the bylaw to go with it. It is moved by Brian and seconded by Michael. Any discussion on the bylaw? Okay, not seeing any. Lindsay, if you'd like to do the vote, please.
Thank you, Mayor Woodbury. Recorded vote on bylaw 2022-058 to adopt policy number 71, the municipal elections recount policy. Councillor Dobryn,
In favor?
Deputy Mayor Milne,
Yes.
Mayor Woodbury,
Yes.
Councillor Shearson,
Yes.
Councillor Frew is absent. Councillor Shipston,
Yes.
Councillor Rice,
Yes.
by a vote of 6-0, that's carried.
Okay, thank you for those, Lindsay. Next, we move on to CAO's reports, 9.5.1. This is the Dundalk Old Town Hall
Mayor Woodbury,
agreement.
sorry.
Yep, go ahead.
I think you're maybe not looking at the addendum. We did add a report from Jim Ellis ahead of Dave's.
Yeah, I turned the page too fast. So I was just preparing everybody that soon there'll be the CAO's reports. But before that, so that was like a teaser, I guess. 9.4.1, this is the Dundalk Water Tower name branding, and it's moved by Brian and seconded by Michael. Hi, Jim. Did you want to add anything to this?
Good afternoon, good people. This is part of the tender package that needs to be completed for the submission to go out. And we have brought some ideas forth, and if we can maybe get some direction, or we need to have something in place within the next month before the tender's released. So we're bringing this for information and council input on where do we head with this. So I can also tell you with a little bit of research here just in the past day that the cost for lettering and a logo would probably, for the two sides, would be in about the $30,000 range. And Markdale's tower confirmation from their lettering that was applied was 23,000. So that gives a bit more context of what it will cost.
Ouch. Barbara.
Thank you. Through you to Jim. Hi, Jim. And I guess you're looking for some discussion on, you know, what we like, or did you just want us to send that to you and you tabulate the most popular vote? Is there a difference in price when applying to color, as in if we were to put Dundalk Township of Southgate and the logo, and you know, does that change the pricing as well? I kind of liked number 4, Dundalk Township of Southgate Room to Grow, but I'm not opposed to including the logo either. I'll just start the conversation.
Yeah, so just on that, the white lettering is seems to stand out more, is what we've been told, and the chamfering accent takes away because there will be some lines that will develop over time on the tower. You see it on other towers, so that kind of takes away from, to keep the lettering more highlighted, that kind of accent that goes around that. But no, these prices are ballpark. They're based on, as far as Markdale, I know they didn't pursue looking for their logo. I don't know all the reasons behind, but they decided that they weren't interested in that part. But we can certainly, until the tender pricings come in and we see the breakdown, then we would know a little bit better on how that plays out. Again, we can, if the logo is there and you want it now, and at tendering time it's say $10,000 and you don't like that price, then we can maybe remove that part. But I strongly suggest that we have the community identified, because something that I've been looking forward to see that tower up and see our name up there. So
Absolutely. Go ahead, Barbara. You had a follow-up?
Just to follow up on that, and I would imagine that over time and whether that, I mean, it's bad enough that the depending on the color of the tower and what color the lettering is, the fading of that, and to have a logo in color fade probably wouldn't be recommended either. I'm not married to the logo. What is everyone else thinking about simplification?
Martin?
Thank you, John. I'm not against having the logo either. I think it would be an interesting, it is certainly an interesting logo for the township. But being on Highway 10, north and south, I think the wording should be kept as simple as possible, mainly because it's next to the highway and it's visible. We don't want any people looking up at it. So just to keep it simple, I'd go with either 1 or 2 myself for that very reason. And then depending on the costing of the logo, I do like the logo. It would be nice to have it on, but that depends on the pricing. But I think really keeping it simple is the main issue here. So that's my 2 cents.
Okay, Jim? Go ahead.
Just when I was drafting this, I pulled off the logo from our archives in the iDrive. So not necessarily like you could have that logo, but not with the Township of Southgate underneath it as well, like doubling up as I look at it now. You know, one or the other kind of thing, not Township of Southgate twice if the logo was there.
Okay, yeah, thanks. Myself, I like number 1, and as you said, Jim, just remove that bottom part, the Township of Southgate. But I think the logo, depending again on the price, like everyone's saying, is an important part, because that'll identify when they see any of our vehicles, when they see any of our buildings that have that logo in front of it. It just will remind them that it goes together and that. So I don't think there's a big point in having a logo if you're not going to use it. And like I say, I wouldn't want to pay too much for it, but to me, number 1 would be my choice. Anyone else have any thoughts? Jason?
John, I had a thought, John. If can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Go ahead, and then Jason.
Right. Thank you, John. I agree with you. I think the logo is important. The other thought I had was, is there any thought to involving the public in the verbiage we want on the tower, or anything else for that matter? You know, would it be maybe the timelines are too tight? I don't know, but you know, maybe there's some. Well, I know there are some very creative people in the community. Maybe we should ask the public what they think.
Yep, good point. Yeah, we could look at that. Jim?
Yeah, previously we brought this up at department head meeting, and there was some suggestions around a survey of that kind of nature, but it hasn't come to fruition. And again, with Triton and the tender coming out, we're now getting to more of a crunch time with the approval that's on the report down below, with the ministry giving the green light on our drinking water works permit amendment. So the tender is ready to roll out here within about a month's time. So if we would have to crash something together quick if we put it out to public for information. But we also discussed whether taking it to the school too. So
Yeah, that's a good idea. Jason?
I tend to agree with you, John and Martin. I like 1 or 2, just keep it simple. As far as the logo, I understand it's what people see, but I mean, I'm thinking if it's 20,000 or even 15, that's I like to keep it simple, the number 1 or 2, and I think if it's that kind of money, maybe the logo, we don't need it. I don't know. That's just my opinion, and keep it simple, I think.
Yep, I agree. Thanks. Anyone else have comments? Okay.
Michael,
go ahead, Michael.
yeah, I'm kind of in the same ballpark. Keep it simple. I mean, it's just going to be a name that people see on the way by. The logo, it's going to fade. It's not going to look pretty through time. So, yeah, I think just keep it simple.
Okay, thank you. I've got pictures now and everything is working.
Okay, thanks. Welcome, Jim. Go ahead, Jason.
Just a thought there. I don't know if it's to Jim or Dave. Could we hit up one of our developers or something to see if they would help maybe pay for the logo or something? It's, you know, if it's a recognition thing, well, it's going to help them too. I don't know. It's just never hurts to ask.
That's true. Go ahead, Dave.
The only thing with getting someone to sponsor it, they would likely want their name recognized, which is going to be more cost, but I'm not sure if a water tower is a good idea for promoting other companies or other developers or and so on. The one thing, a lot of this cost will be paid by development charges, so they are in a roundabout way already funding the water tower in a certain way. But we cannot.
Yeah, no, I wasn't necessarily saying them advertise. It's just a thought. It's going to help everybody. So.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. So to me, it seems like go ahead, Barbara.
Oh, no, I can't remember. What color is the tower? Can't remember.
Jim?
Officially, we don't have a color at this point, so.
Okay. So through you, Mayor Woodbury, what does Jim need from us to get it tendered? A few options to play with, 1 and 2, with or without a logo?
Is that?
Yeah, I would think so.
Okay. Dave?
Yeah, I mean, just, you know, we've got 30 days to decide. Latest is April the 18th. We can decide sooner, that would be great. But, you know, at least put it out there. The one thing I want to add to respond to Councillor Rice is that we are still seeking funding. We're working on an FCM grant for some energy savings and some efficiencies that we'd realize by putting the water tower in place. It might be as much as like 10 or 15% funding, but still on you know, a $5 million project, it's still a fair bit of money. So that's an opportunity we're looking at as well.
Okay, good, thank you. So it sounds to me like the consensus here is 1, 2, and if the logo is costly, then we wouldn't go for that. Is that pretty much what I think everybody was thinking? Yeah. Okay. So is that good for you, Jim? Do you need that in any more of a motion, or is that just fine? Go ahead, Jim.
I think that's enough direction, Mayor Woodbury. I can just ask them to put in the framework of the tender that the logo as an optional pricing for logo. So.
Okay. Yeah. Yep. Okay. All right. Thank you. Any more comment on this? Okay. Seeing none, I'll call the question. Is anyone opposed to that motion? And that is carried. So thank you, Jim. Now, the one that I was teasing everybody about and mentioning a little earlier, we have Dave's report, and that's on the Dundalk Old Town Hall agreement with Junction Community Initiative and Team Town Hall 9.5.1, and that is moved by Barbara and seconded by Martin. Dave, did you want to add anything to this?
Better get the mute off. Yes, I wouldn't mind just adding in this process has been, you know, taking a long time, but the last thing we're at right now is working with Wellington, and what I'm recommending in here is that the mayor and the deputy mayor and I meet with Wellington to negotiate some final things, especially in regarding to future capital investments, and having us all understand that better and see if we can drill down and tighten that up a bit. The other thing that we were a bit, we didn't get the insurance feedback as quick as we had hoped. So there will be some minor changes to the Junction Community Initiative and the Team Town Hall Agreement related to the insurance indemnity clause that the lawyer is working on right now. And I'd hope to have that for this meeting, but what's in the agenda doesn't have that change. So it's up to council whether they want, I would suggest we defer those two bylaws until either April the 27th or May the 4th or 5th, the 4th, and we can do them, but they should, those two agreements will be done for sure by then. I wouldn't doubt I'll have them tomorrow or Friday. And then the Wellington agreement, I'm hoping for May 4th as well, just to finalize those things with the support of the mayor and the deputy mayor. And I'll take any questions if there are any.
Okay, thank you. Questions, Martin?
Thank you, John. Yeah, Dave, did you just say that with mayor and the deputy mayor and yourself negotiating the final agreement, did you say that's fairly soon then?
Yes,
like you said,
I'm hoping
okay.
For definitely that would be May the 4th for the Wellington agreement. I'm hoping to actually have a face-to-face meeting with Wellington Capital Corp. He's reviewing the red lines and should be ready to meet, in the next 3 or 4 business days.
Okay, that sounds good. And I do tend to agree with you deferring this bylaw until everything gets buttoned up and clean. So
yeah.
I certainly agree with that. So thank you very much.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Second, my screen just went somewhere. Yeah. Here we are. Got everybody back. Jason?
So just to be clear, what are we voting on today then about this?
This would be just the first part where it's that we've received them as information, and that we I guess with this one the motion actually says that we approve them as presented.
Right, that's what I wondered. So
yeah, so I guess do we need to change that at all?
I think if it's okay, I think we could approve them as presented. We will do that again at the May 7th meeting. So I would suggest, rather than talk about May or April 27th, let's just say in the 2 clauses, Junction Bylaw and Team Town Hall Bylaw, that we just change those to May the 4th. And that bylaw, those bylaws will be definitely ready by then. I think it's fine to approve the agreements as presented because they are final, with exception of just a minor change to the indemnity clause. And that will then come back again for final approval to support the bylaw. But it's council's wish how to proceed there. We could say that council received the 2 rather than approve them.
Okay, that's probably a better idea. Jason?
well, I was just wondering, so we are approving these with the 2 whatever we want to call it, the 2 groups, but we're not approving the other one yet. So what if in your meeting he comes back with something different? Is all I'm wondering. Like maybe he don't like maybe he's already seen these agreements. I'm sure he had, but maybe he'll change something then. I just wonder.
Yeah, he's fine with the Team Town Hall and Junction agreements. I guess whether we approve or receive them, we can approve them at any time before we approve the Wellington agreement, because there is a clause in the Wellington agreement that, and a clause in these agreements that without the Wellington Agreement, it all falls apart. The Wellington Agreement is the pivotal agreement to make it all work.
Okay. And Barbara?
Through you, so what you're suggesting is the second clause is that council receive the agreements as presented, and that
Correct.
council consider approving the agreement at the May 4th by bylaw at the May 4th meeting.
Correct. For
In
clause
both
3.
the third and fourth clauses,
Yeah.
and then the rest remains.
Yeah.
Is sufficient. Then I would move that amendment, or is that, if that could be a friendly amendment, Lindsay?
No, we'll do it as an actual amendment.
Right.
I got it on the screen there.
Okay.
Thank you. I would so move the amendment.
Okay, do we have a seconder for that? Martin? Okay, give me a second to have a look at that. Does any discussion on it? Not seeing any right now. So I'll call a question on the amendment. And that was, you can see before you, it's that clause removed. Is anyone opposed to that? Okay, that is carried. So now we can go back to the original motion as amended. Any further discussion on that? Okay, seeing none. Is anyone opposed to that motion? And that is carried. Okay, so thank you everybody on that. And then Lindsay, how do you want to do deferral of the next two? Do you need motions for each of them, or can we do them together, or?
Yeah, just a motion for each, just be it resolved that council defer bylaw with the number until the May 4th meeting.
Okay, so it's 9.5.2, and I guess I'll entertain a motion to defer. Barbara, and a seconder, please. Jason, any discussion? Okay, is anyone opposed to that? That is carried. And next we have 9.5.3, and that's the other partnership agreement. I entertain a motion to defer. We could have a mover and seconder, please. Brian and Barbara, any discussion on that one? Okay, is anyone opposed? That is carried. Thanks, Dave. It's good to see these. We're seeing we're getting to that point. Next is Clint's reports. Welcome, Clint. And it's 9.6.1. And that is moved by Barb and seconded by Brian, and that's the More Homes Act, More Homes for Everyone Act. Hi, Clint. Would you like to say anything about this report?
Yes, I would actually. I think this one is actually pretty important for the township to voice their opinions on, because it will have some financial considerations down the road. And so you may or may not have seen the new legislation that came out on March 30th, so it's only 20 days old here. And there's a number of things in that bill that change how development is going to be approved, essentially, in a number of cases, whether it's a site plan or an official plan or zoning bylaw amendments. Those decisions are now going to have strict timelines on them. And if those timelines are not met, then fees are required to be refunded. And so there's a number of things that a municipality can do with that. They can, as I've said in my report, they can increase the fees and just say, okay, we're only going to be able to approve half of those on time, and the other half we're just going to absorb that with an increase of fees, or they can use an increase of fees to hire additional staff to get them out through the door. Another option is to require stricter application requirements, and it may not just be one of these things, it may be a whole bunch of these things. Once the final details of it are approved, we'll have to look closely at what we do in our municipality and find out what works best for us, as we usually do, and then go from there. But another option, making sure stricter application requirements to reduce time wasting, basically going back and forth with applicants. Some municipalities may just say, no, we're going to refuse it because we don't have enough time to consider it, and go right to the tribunal. I personally wouldn't suggest that, only because it's equally as cost. It's the fees that you pay for an application fee are nothing compared to what you're going to pay to defend yourself at the tribunal. So there's that issue. Another impact would be it may require municipalities to have more frequent meetings. If we get an application in right after we've had our meeting at the end of the month, we may not be able to get it dealt with in a timely fashion if we don't have all of an extra meeting in there in some cases. For our consents, we only have a meeting once a month, so we may need to start bringing that committee of adjustment into council meetings as an option, or have it a second time in the month as needed, just to meet these timelines. Those are just some suggestions. Another impact would be for smaller municipalities, maybe having to build in redundancy in staff where there's only one person, and if that person takes sick or God forbid goes on vacation, they're not be able to meet these times as required. So it's just a consideration that municipalities may need to look at providing some additional redundancy. It's not uncommon, particularly in our municipality, where in the springtime we can receive 8 to 10 municipalities within a week and a half, or sorry, 8 to 10 applications within a week and a half. And by this legislation, all of those would have to be addressed at the same meeting. So that's 8 reports, 8 bylaws, 8 everything, and it really would load up your council meetings to one specific item being planning. And whereas in previous councils we could spread it out a little bit with a meeting one way or the other to break it up a little bit, but that's not going to be the case anymore. There's other provisions in there that I've noted in my report regarding increased powers for the minister to basically, once he makes a decision, there's no appeal of that decision, etc. They did allow for appeal rights to certain ministers' decisions now for a municipality, which wasn't allowed in the past. Once they made a decision on a particular application, it was final, but there are certain appeal rights when a municipality disagrees with the minister's decision with respect to an official plan. Another big change is the amendments to site plan control. On the positive side, they went from a 30-day timeline approval to 60 days, which is helpful. Most municipalities currently don't meet the 30-day threshold for approving a site plan, just simply because some of them are very complex when you get into the higher orders of buildings and whatnot, and large complexes for industry and that sort of thing. It can be very complex, and smaller municipalities often have to send information out for peer review, which requires time. We don't necessarily have engineering on staff. We send it out to Triton to review. So those all take time, and therefore makes it more difficult to meet some of these timelines. So those are the main ones I wanted to talk about. There are comments requested by the province on the EBR by April 29th. So if council has any specific things they want to add or include with those comments, I'm suggesting we do make comments on them. It shouldn't be up to a municipality to support private development by refunding fees to them if they're unable to meet a timeline, because that's what it's going to amount to. So that's my comments, and I'll take questions.
Thank you, Clint. And I agree. It sounds like it's going to be more costly for the end user anyways, because they're the ones that we're going to end up having to charge. Brian, go ahead.
Thank you, John. And, you know, I read through the report, and, you know, for the most part, I think they got it right. We're in a housing crisis. We are thousands and thousands and thousands of homes short of what we need in this province, if not in our municipality here in Southgate. And it cannot be, we cannot go on like it's just business as usual. We need to find new ways to push these through faster, but yet be vigilant so that our interests are protected. One idea that comes to mind is, why are we demanding a site plan for a cluster of buildings in the middle of 100 acres? In my mind, that makes no sense. Like, why are we doing that? We don't need to do that, in my mind. There's the building envelope. There's your cluster envelope. Do what you want in there. Put your buildings wherever you want. They're not bothering anybody in the middle of 100 acres. We need to get on with this. We can't just drag our feet and say, yeah, well, it's a crisis, but I don't care. It's like saying, the barn's on fire, honey, but I'm going to the hardware store to get a hose. We can't go on like that. We need to get these through faster. And I think the government, you know, for the most part, got it right. Now, there's reasons why they talk about bureaucracy in here. There's reasons why that bureaucracy is in place. You know, there's also a reason why, you know, 10-story buildings in Bangladesh just collapse because they haven't got any standards. Well, we need those standards here, the building code and all that kind of stuff. But as you know, there was examples in the report that showed, you know, why those timelines are going to be tight. There's no doubt about it. But we got to get on with it. And what I'm asking Clint, and I'm not trying to be critical here, Clint, but what I'm asking of you is to give us more ideas to how we can cut out pieces of our approval process that we don't need to be doing, and to make your job easier to focus on the important pieces that do come forward here in our municipality. So I haven't got a question, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to get down off my soapbox now, and those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Yep, thanks, Brian. And it wasn't a great big soapbox. It was a decent one. One of the things, just if I can jump in for a second, is that if we do have the site plans for those things, I would prefer to have a checkbox thing where we know what we want. And it's pretty generic across the bunch. I don't see why it has to come to council. If we approve a policy or a bylaw that planning could just do the check marks, it fits there, good, done. And that would save a pile of time too. Clint, but your comments would probably be way more better.
I don't necessarily disagree with Brian that we got to find ways to do things better. I do question highly whether or not removing fees is going to change any of that, because there's only so much work that can be done. So I think the question, rather than saying, oh, if maybe don't review it quite as well as you should, because that's what will happen. As you try and push more things through, things get missed, shall we say, or left out of the process in the review. And ultimately that comes back on the township, maybe not tomorrow, but 10 years when you're like, God, I wish we would have done that. Then that's when it comes back to roost. I do think there may be ways that we can look at doing things quicker, certainly. But I don't think just simply saying, oh, if you don't have it done within a certain period of time, that you're going to achieve the results of, certainly not of getting hundreds of thousands of homes built. Because I'll tell you what the limit is. It's not planning. That's that. There's more than just that. When I hear from Flato that their limit for building is 200 homes a year, it's not because of me. It's because there's not enough labor force or infrastructure there to do more than that. Right? So it's fair to say that there's a bigger systemic problem than just, getting it through the process. And speeding up that process might be fine, but are we opening ourselves up to additional liability? So I'm happy to look at other ways to do it quicker. I just don't want to open us all up to some lawsuits or whatnot because we haven't done what we should.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Barbara.
Mayor Woodbury, CAO Milner had his hand up, and I do have comment, but I don't have to make it at this time.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Dave, I didn't see you. Go ahead.
That's fine. I was just going to talk in response to Brian's comments. I don't really think the planning department holds up our residential development. The residential developers come with pretty complete packages, and that's really the crux of the problem, is the completeness of packages that we receive. And so what the problem is when a package comes in and they make payment, that's what triggers the start of the timelines. I think what we have to transition to is a consultative type fee to consult and see if these applications are complete. Once they're complete, and let's say they can get them complete in a week or two, but sometimes it's 2 months it takes to get them complete because they don't know the process well enough and they haven't consulted with a professional to get advice on how to do that. But if they were to, consult and do it fairly quickly and get their application complete within a week or two, that fee could go towards the application. And the application timelines is then the next step. And I think we can make them fairly consistently under the timelines without rebating any fees. But I think what we can push back is that a lot of the problems Clint has is with the commenting or the agencies getting information back to us on a timely basis and making the timelines that we need to get them to council. And maybe if an agency doesn't comment in a certain period of time, their comments are lost as part of the process. But I think I would hate to go backwards on site plans, because a site plan today may be important, but more for the future to establish where things are at in the township files, that if somebody builds within that envelope from a severed lot or whatever, that there's still that site plan in place to control things. We had someone phone recently. They put their application on a Friday or on Tuesday, and on Friday they were asking when that would be going to a meeting, and it still wasn't complete on the Friday. So that's some of the problems of communications and making sure these applications are complete on a timely basis. And when they are, we can get them through. When they're not, that's when it's a bit more painstaking, and maybe there's a process that we can tighten up there to make that work a little better. But those are my comments in relation to this. This is a challenging area, but something we need to take a deep dive into and create efficiencies if we can.
Okay, thank you. Barbara.
Thank you, and through you. My concerns with much, thank you, first of all, for the report, Clinton, and thank you for your time to discuss it. The delays that often occur, as Clinton has mentioned, could actually end up being intentional if a individual just, I'm going to get my application feedback because I won't, I'll delay getting the application complete, because once we take their money, you know, the clock is ticking, and it's not necessarily the planner who's holding it up. In fact, I would say that it isn't. My other several concerns are, you know, the province decides in here on the level of securities a developer will provide, and if a subdivision, draft plan of subdivision, I'm going to get all the terms wrong, is expired, but it'll be, the province can deem it has not expired, and then you end up with not as reliable a developer, and or, you know, they walk away and we're on the hook for all of that expense. That's what the securities are for, and we determine, or through our engineers, what security level is important. Development should more or less pay for development, and removing these fees will end up being borne by the taxpayer, not necessarily the end user. And the amendments to site plan control. Clinton, can you elaborate on this delegation of authority to approve site plan applications to someone other than council? Because now we have to establish another committee that has to meet, or I'm not sure how. So Clinton, you can elaborate on that. And I'll just finish up two things. If the province is the approval authority on an official plan, and they've approved our official plan, and then they'll say, well, you know what, we're going to waive your official plan. Why are we bothering? Why don't we just say, hand it back over to the province and let them decide where everything goes? And, you know, as far as farm structures in a farm envelope, that's not housing. Those, yes, we can, you know, help speed up that development, but that's not going to help with the housing deficit. So those are my comments. Clinton, I look forward to understanding better the amendments to site plan and delegation of authority. Thank you.
Okay, Clint, go ahead.
Okay, so first point I want to touch on, the biggest thing we did to speed up site plan control is have it not apply to housing at all. It only applies to commercial and industrial development, no matter where it is in the township. So it's not going to impact housing whatsoever. If that's what we're talking about here, whether or not we have one for a shop out in the countryside is not going to impact residential development at all. Second thing is with respect to the delegation, what the province is saying is by July 1st of this year, someone other than council, so a staff member essentially, or other designated person or body, is to be delegated that authority. You're required to do it. So you're going to be losing the ability to approve site plans. That's now going to be in the hands of staff or other designated body as you choose. So, and that's done as a way to speed it up, because sometimes we have to wait 2 weeks for a council meeting, and time is money, right? So in that sense, there's some speeding up right away, whether that's the planner or the CAO. it is up to council, or maybe you have both, as one as an alternate or deputy. So that's how that's going to work, is it's actually going to be out of council's hands altogether and into staff's hands. The province basically feels that staff know what they're doing when they get to the site plan stage, and as long as they're ensuring it's done correctly, they should be able to approve it. So that's where that's going. I think I answered all of the questions. Sorry if I missed one.
Looks like you did. Go ahead, Barb.
Just to follow up, that was pretty much my only real question. Most of the other was concern so we have already, or we are recommending in our official plan, eliminating the zone, or applying zoning for certain commercial industrial if the property is zoned to allow for that type of development. It doesn't have to come to a public meeting. And site plan control was the fail-safe that we would be mitigating any concerns, a public consultation for site plan control. So what happens then? Now we're I apologize, because now I'm getting into the weeds of the process, and it doesn't really apply here, but we've already tried to expedite that process for site plan control by zoning properties appropriately. And now we are hopefully not eliminating the public process on site plan control, so that you, Clinton, can make the best recommendation on mitigating any, nuisance factors of those site plan controls.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep, go ahead, Clint.
You're right. Once you start taking pieces out of the tower, it becomes a Jenga tower, and eventually it's going to fall over. That's how we had it set up. We were actually being progressive and saying, and not just saying it's going to be pre-zoned. We were saying if you met certain parameters, you didn't need to go through a zoning at all for some of these shops. If you met some of the conditions, we have to put that into our zoning bylaw if it's approved by the county. But that's essentially it. And then all that would be required then is the site plan control then to mitigate any potential concerns. So if we then speed up site plan control even more, there's a greater chance that things will get missed, or commenting agencies won't get back to us, and it could be something very important. It could be the fact that the MTO is not going to give you an entrance permit, which is pretty important, because you can cry all you want to them, but 9 times out of 10 they just say too bad, so sad. So these are the types of things that it does take time to do. But again, we're getting away from residential type things, which this is meant to do, and getting into commercial aspects. To be fair, the higher density residential does require site plan control. So, for example, the Flatto apartments that are constructed in Dundalk did require site plan control, and we had that basically. They submitted their site plan really early, and we had it all ready to go for when the servicing was available there. We had to actually have servicing available for that particular block before, and as soon as it was, we were able to bring it to the very next council meeting. So as far as efficiency, we can be pretty efficient when we're required to. But again, if we were to rely on that timeline, we would have been a year out of date because they applied early. So we're not going to allow them to do that anymore. We're going to say, no, you keep it on your desk until we're closer to that time frame, is how it's going to work. So that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Martin?
Thank you, John. Hi, Clinton. How are you? My question is on a different. My question is on a different tangent. Page 135 of 5, number 6, new rules regarding community benefit charge bylaw. And it says at the bottom, the Township of Southgate does not have a community benefit bylaw for parkland and all that. Would that be something beneficial in the years to come to have every 5 years because of the subdivisions going up, or is that part of it?
Well, the community benefit is mainly geared, and I could be wrong here, but it's my understanding is that it's mainly geared towards transit centers, where if you have you're within a range of a transit center, if I'm not mistaken, that these community benefit bylaws actually are useful, whereas we don't have that sort of thing in Grey Bruce. So
Dave wanted to.
Okay, you're absolutely right. You twigged my memory there. I did read that. It is mainly for transit hubs, so it's not applicable to rural Ontario at all. So, okay, thanks, Clinton.
Okay, Dave, did you want to comment on that? You're on mute.
Councillor Shipston, maybe park that question until we get before Watson and Associates doing our DC study. And I think there's more discussion on that community benefit. There are some other areas, but let's talk about that in more detail then. But that's a really good question. The one thing I would jump off of what some of Clint has said in relation to, I think this staff approving of site plans is not something we would ask for or want. I think we would need some policy on guidance on what the parameters are that we would approve. And I think we would need to ask the questions, because what everybody's learning about this is, you know, if they don't like staff's decision, is there an appeal process back to council on the site plan? So there's many more questions and answers as of this time, and Clint and I are struggling with that, but we're actually missing right now a session that the province is putting on here at I think it was 1 o'clock to talk about these very things, but a lot of new information coming out on a weekly basis.
Okay, thank you. Brian.
Thanks, John. So Clint, do I understand you're going to be providing comments back to the province on the report on our behalf?
I am, yes.
Will we see those comments before you send them?
If you're in agreement, that you being council, that the deadline's April 29th. So there's not, that's why I brought this report to this council, because their comment period is so short, right? They only released it on March 30th.
Right.
And so I got next week. So I suppose I could show you next week what those comments are going to be specifically. I didn't think they were going to change very much from what I had in this report, but we do have a council meeting, if I'm not next week, that we could slate it in so that just before that deadline, you guys can have a look at them.
Well, and I'm certainly not questioning your good judgment, Clint, but I think if you're going to be commenting on our behalf, I'd like to see what the comments are, because ultimately it's our name, right? So I would welcome that opportunity to see your comments next week, if nothing else, but in a draft form. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Seeing none, I'll call the question. Is anyone opposed to this? Okay, that is carried. Next, we move on to the Flato Glenelg subdivision phase 2. zoning bylaw amendment, and that's moved by Martin, seconded by Michael. Anything you want to add to this, Clint?
This is just sort of the next stage in the process that they have got their official plan in order now, and it's been approved by the County of Grey. And this is our chance in this report to not only zone it, but to provide recommendations for draft plan conditions to the County of Grey. So I hope you've had a chance to look at those conditions, and if you agree with them, we will send them on. And if not, then we'll discuss them. But that's the intent of the report, is to get endorsement of those draft plan conditions and then send it on to the County of Grey.
Okay, thank you. Questions or comments? Brian?
Thank you, John. Clint, looking at the, I guess the draft plan of subdivision here, the diagram, I see block 111 and 110 shows openings onto CP Rail Trail. Will those be, will people be able to use those once the subdivision is being built or is built to access the trail, or will those be, are those just paper openings, so to speak?
Those particular ones will eventually be roadways to connect to the adjacent parcel, which is also owned by Flato. And that's actually where the MZO has taken place on that parcel to the east there, and therefore those are additional connection points to that parcel. So eventually they're going to be roads, but in the interim, I imagine people would be able to access.
So I guess then further to my question is, and I understood that yes, those will be eventually roads, obviously, but will people from this piece of the subdivision have physical access to get out onto the trail rather than walk all the way, well, pretty well all the way back down to, what is it, Glenelg Street to get out onto the trail? That doesn't make any sense to me. If we're trying to encourage active participation, I believe Flato needs to provide access. Preferably, I would suggest at the north end, or what I call the north end of this subdivision, access out onto the trail.
Okay.
That's all I got. It looks good otherwise. Thank you.
Yeah, Clint, and then Dave had something for this too.
So in looking at the subdivision, there is a pedestrian access just south of Mackenzie Street there to the trail. So there's an access there. There would be these roadway accesses, each of them where there will be a sidewalk there likely to get to the rail trail and eventually cross over it. And then the north end is actually where the stormwater pond is proposed. And typically what we've been doing is putting a walking trail around some of those stormwater ponds. It's usually the maintenance road, but we sort of turn it into a walking trail. That certainly, because it is right abutting against it, there's no reason why you couldn't have access to the rail trail from there.
Thank you.
Thanks. Dave, did you want to add anything? Today is have your mute on, Dave.
Yeah, that's my day. There's a block 106, I believe it is, if my glasses aren't serving me. Yeah, 106 to the west. And then that connects to block 105, which is a walking trail on the west side of the property as well.
Okay. All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Not seeing any. So I will call the question. Is anyone opposed to this motion? That is carried. And next we have the bylaw to go with it, moved by Michael, seconded by Jim. Any comments on the bylaw? Okay, seeing none. Lindsay, I'll get you to do the vote.
Thank you, Mayor Woodbury. Recorded vote for bylaw 2022-048, the zoning bylaw amendment of Glenelg Phase 2. Councillor Shipston,
Yes.
Councillor Rice,
Yes.
Councillor Dobryn,
In favor?
Deputy Mayor Milne,
Yay.
Councillor Shearson,
Yes.
Mayor Woodbury,
Yes.
Councillor Frew,
Yes.
by a vote of 7-0, that's carried.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have moved by Jim, seconded by Martin, the Aaron and Catherine Bowman staff report. That's 9.6.4. Anything you want to add to this, Clint?
No, I'll leave that one for itself.
Okay. Questions or comments? Brian?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, but I can't let it go very easily here this morning or this afternoon. So in my mind, this is a prime example of why we don't need to spend time on a site plan in essentially the 100-acre farm. It's in the middle of 100 acres. I don't know why we're wasting time telling this gentleman where to plant a few cedar trees. It makes no sense to me. And yes or no, it won't provide immediate relief to the housing issue, but actually it will, because if Clint's not spending his time doing this site plan, he's spending his time doing other stuff related to housing. So as I said, this has been a bone of contention with me for a while, but and it probably won't be the last time I speak to it, but so Clint, best be forewarned. So thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I won't take it personal.
It's not intended to be personal, not at all. Because as far as site plans go, it's very well done, but I just don't think we need to be doing it. That's all. Thank you.
Okay. Barbara?
Through you to Clinton, is not the site plan process also involving making sure that they're not, I mean, it is in, that it's going to be in the farm cluster, that it's to within the size frame that is permitted, that it's not in a flood zone, that it's not in a wetland. I mean, obviously it's going to be in the farm cluster, but isn't that part of site plan control, just to have those checks and balances, that they build it where that it's within that cluster, and not well, you know what, we just changed our mind, we're gonna put it on the other side that's part of a wetland. Not that, I don't know why anybody would do that, but they bring in fill. I'm just saying there are some checks and balances that are of benefit to the site plan process. And while I'm also in favor, like when it's obvious that they've met all of the criteria, why it needs to be delayed to come to council, I'm just, there are benefits to site plan control. And if we're not holding up the process, then why not make sure that it's meeting all of that criteria?
Okay, I'll allow the question because we allowed Brian's soapbox, but let's keep the questions and comments to do with this report, not the general procedures. So go ahead, Clint. I'll allow this one, and we'll go from there.
Okay, so I'm going to speak to what we look at for this site plan specifically, and it's not just some trees around the building and whatnot. It's far from it. We look at the location of the outside storage, because we don't want it to look kind of dumpy with it scattered everywhere, because we have enough of that in the countryside with others where it creates bylaw enforcement issues. So we try to keep it clean, and this gives us a tool to make sure that they comply with that. It also allows us to regulate things like lighting. Believe it or not, People don't like some of those yard lights and stuff that shine in their windows when they're out in the countryside. So it helps to regulate those. Even the location and orientation of the building. For example, not allowing the main roll-up doors to be directed at another residence, because I continually end up having to get them to change plans, because that's exactly what they do. There's a small residence across the road and they plant the doors right there. So every bit of noise because in the summer they all operate with the door open, goes right towards that residence. So we get them to turn it 90 degrees or 180 as the case may be, so that it's not directed right at that residence. So that's just another example. We also do regulate setbacks a little bit. Also, fire safety is another big one, where we have the ability to require them to install water reservoirs if the fire department deems it necessary for fire suppression. We don't do it a lot here, but it has happened on a few occasions where we do require that. If we were down in Wellington County, every single one of these would have a $40,000 water reservoir with them. So that's another tool that we have to regulate this. So that's also to our benefit. We look at the stacking of outside storage. Sometimes you can create stacking hazards where you get skids and products stacked higher than the roof line of the actual shop, which is not really appropriate in some cases. So those are just a few of the items that we look at. It's not just the trees or whatever in this case. It's a number of things that I look at when approving it, and whether or not, most importantly, are they within the zone boundary that we established. So
thank you.
That's all.
Okay. Any more questions or comments on the site plan? Dave?
Yeah, just to add to what Clint says, and I can understand the pushback on the need for site plan, but oftentimes site plan are really only needed 5% of the time when we need to do enforcement and seek compliance. And that 5% is not likely with the original owner, it's likely with the second owner that wants to do something a little bit different, that makes it a little bit more onerous on neighbors or whatever. But those are the things. I mean, a site plan is there for the life of the site. So that's why it's so important, because it's not always the first owner that creates the problems. It's the future owners that pivot the site to something different.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Any questions or comments on the site plan then? Okay, I'll call the question. Is anyone opposed? That is carried. And next we have the bylaw to go with it, and that is moved by Barbara and seconded by Michael. Any discussion on the bylaw? Okay, Lindsay, I'll turn the vote over to you then.
Thank you, Mayor Woodbury. Recorded vote for bylaw 2022-050, site plan for Aaron and Catherine Bauman. Mayor Woodbury?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Milne?
Yay.
Councillor Dobryn?
In favor?
Councillor Rice?
Yes.
Councillor Shearson?
Yes.
Councillor Frew?
Yes.
Councillor Shipston?
Yes.
By a vote of 7-0, that's carried.
Okay, thanks, Lindsay, and thank you, Clint. Next, we'll move on to Terry's report. It's 9.7.1, moved by Brian, seconded by Michael, and it's about historical points of interest. Hi, Terry.
Hi, everybody. Mayor Woodbury, Council. So just a quick update here. And I apologize if I lose my voice. I have a bit of a sore throat, so I'll apologize for the scratchy voice. The CAO presented this report the historical points of interest report originally in August of 2020, and we're now ready to move ahead with the project. So a pilot story map is planned to be up and running for this summer, very similar to the links that are in the report for Owen Sound and Hanover. And if technology permits, the goal is to create a customizable driving and walking tour for 2023. So we're pushing the envelope a little bit by attempting to add customizable tours where the user could actually select the points of interest that they're interested in, and then the app would create a route map for them to follow. But that's something that we're looking into with the IT department to see if that's possible. So we would appreciate the feedback and direction from council. Things such as, do we run the pilot project without signs and have these signs created and installed for 2023 once the full map is up and running and we have some feedback from use? Are there any specific criteria for the points of interest that are included either on the map or that qualify to have a sign posted? And are those two different things? So for example, do we include all points of interest on the map, but only certain locations or certain structures that meet a certain criteria qualify to have a sign posted? And so in June, we should have a pilot story map functional. And at that time, we'll bring another report to council, hopefully with any of the comments that you have from today before the map goes live. And Dave, this is really, this concept for this project came from you. So do you have anything further to add to that, Dave?
You're unmuted again. No, Terry's doing a great job, and I think she will definitely need lots of feedback from people that know the history of some of these locations, and we continue to hear more stories as we roll this out.
Okay, thank you. Brian.
Thanks, John. Terry, I wonder, is there an intent to add GPS coordinates to some of these points or all of these points of interest?
Yes. Yes, so it's actually the GIS department at Grey County that I'm working with. So there will be GPS coordinates added. They will have a draft map ready, and they will have a viewing link that I will be able to give to council. And that will be ready in approximately 1 month with the draft locations that you see on the handwritten map. And then from there, yes, there will be GPS coordinates for the users to follow to find the locations.
Yep, go ahead, Brian.
Thanks, John. That's great. That's great. I'm a little reluctant, I guess, to sign a lot of these historic points, mainly because signs tend to, over time, grow legs. And if it's a historic corner of something and somebody has, my great-great-grandfather or whatever, grandmother used to live here, boy, wouldn't that look nice on the dining room wall? I'm thinking maybe if we don't put the signs up, then they don't disappear. So I'm inclined to just do the GPS and the history online kind of thing and leave it at that. But just my opinion. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions or comments? Barbara.
Thank you, through you, and thank you, Terry. Thank you, Dave, for starting this, and Terry for following through. I may have missed it, but there's one thing that I don't see here, and that's any reference to Agnes MacPhail.
Yeah, and that's why I did. So that's why I did say there's further points to be added. So there's actually quite a few points that are missing. This was more the geographical location of the hamlets was phase 1. Then we'll be adding items in such as the cenotaph, Agnes MacPhail, the Dundalk Town Hall is not on here. The historic Dundalk Fire Hall is not here. Some of the churches and some of the schools are missing. So Agnes MacPhail will definitely be on here, and as will, there's 2 plaques for her that we'll also have GPS locations for sure.
Okay, great. Dave?
And there will be a fair bit of history come out with Agnes MacPhail around Campbell's Corners. So anyway, that's there'll be a lot of tie-ins.
Great. Yeah. Any other questions or comments? Okay, I'll call the question. Is anyone opposed to this motion? That's carried. Thanks for all your work on this, Terry and Dave. Barb, go ahead.
Can we have a brief recess?
I would think that would be a good idea. What do you want, 5 or 10 minutes? 5's good. I don't see any difference. So 5 minutes. It's 25 after. I'll see everyone at 2:30. Thanks. Okay, I've got 2:30, so we've got quorums. I'll call the meeting back to order. And we have under bylaws and motions, moved by Martin and seconded by Jim, the adopted council correspondence policy. Did you want to add anything to that, Lindsay?
I don't think so, Mayor Woodbury. This was on the agenda last week, so just approving by bylaw now. I did just add a quick piece under, I added a new section actually called time sensitive communications, just that if they're received, then obviously we would send to council and then put on the next available agenda. So just a small amendment there, and that was it.
Okay, thank you. Questions or comments? Okay, well then we'll let you do the vote.
Thank you, Mayor Woodbury. Recorded vote for bylaw 2022-053 to adopt the council correspondence policy. Councillor Shipston. Councillor Shipston, you are not muted. Someone, you're giving thumbs up, so I'll say yes for you for that one. You're maybe having the same issue you were having last meeting. Mayor Woodbury?
Yes.
Councillor Rice?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Milne?
Yay.
Councillor Frew? Councillor Frew? I'm going to mark Councillor Frew absent. Councillor Dobryn?
I said yes.
And
oh, sorry, Councillor Frew, it didn't come through, so I will say yes for Councillor Frew. Councillor Dobryn?
in favor.
Councillor Shearson?
Yes.
By a vote of 7-0, that's carried.
Okay, thank you. I didn't receive any notices of motion. Are there any from anyone? No. Okay. Next, we can move to the regular business consent agenda. I didn't get any notice of anything being pulled, I don't think. So it was moved by Brian and seconded by Jim. Any discussion on the items? Okay, seeing a lot of quiet, so I'll call the question. Oh, Barbara, go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask about the Eco Park update, EDO 2022007. I think that's, yes. And it referred to the Ag 4.0.4 video, Terry. The video link that you provided requires a password and then there's a fee. Is that going, and do we have access to that in, you know, as a, I don't know, a township copy? Or, I mean, I don't think that we want to, personally, I don't want to be ordering it if we're ordering it, you know, a dozen times.
I will find out. I do believe that there will be a public link coming available on YouTube. And if not, then I'll get permission. Sorry, I'll get permission to share my link with you guys.
I hope you're feeling better. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Just a odd throat thing happening here.
Yep. Any other questions or comments? Okay, I'll call the motion then. Is anyone opposed to the motion? That is carried. Next, we move on to 12.2, which is moved by Barbara, seconded by Jason. And again, I didn't get anything pulled for that. So it's the correspondence consent agenda. Any comments, questions? Okay. I'll call the question. Is anybody opposed to this motion? And that is carried. Next is resolutions from other municipalities. And that is moved by Michael and seconded by Jim. Is there anything on this one? Barbara?
I'd just like to pull 12.3.5, the Town of Mulmer correspondence, More Homes for Everyone Act.
Okay. Yep. I think I did get that. So anything else from anyone? So the discussion now is on 12.3 with the exception of that one. Is there any comments on any of the others? Okay, I'll call a question on the others. Anyone opposed? Okay, that is carried. So Barb, you want this one pulled. So I don't know do you want to move something on it, or we'll let you go ahead?
Thank you, Mayor Woodbury. And I'm wondering if, Lindsay, you could perhaps share your screen. I did send the resolution. This is in relation to, it kind of backs up the planner's report with regard to the bill. And I can read it out loud if, for those who are just listening. It's basically the same, other than point 2, as the resolution from the Town of Mulmer, that we receive it for information, and that the Council of the Township of Southgate receives and supports the resolution from the Town of Mulmer regarding More Homes for Everyone Act. And whereas Council supports removing red tape and expediting the creation of affordable housing through the proper review and approval, and whereas Council values citizen input, professional planning recommendations, and elected official decision-making, now therefore Council provides the following comments on Bill 109. Final decision-making should rest with elected officials. Local planners' recommendations should take into consideration the input through public consultation and local expertise. Ratepayers should not be subsidizing development applications through refunds to application fees intended to cover the cost of processing applications. That a definition of minor rezoning has not been established. Planners should not be put in a position of having to be experts and decision makers over all other disciplines. Delegating authority for site plans and creating penalties for site plan and minor rezonings will not solve housing crisis, as the proposed legislation targets single lot developments opposed to large scale residential development. And further, that a copy of this resolution be forwarded to the Province of Ontario, Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, Environmental Registry, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, and the Southgate Affordable and Attainable Housing Committee. Before I comment further, it's not on the floor. Thank you, Mayor Woodbury.
Okay, thanks. Do I have a seconder for Barb's motion? Martin? Okay, so Barb, would you like to comment?
With discussion with the planner, Clinton Strudwick, that in addition to his comments that will be coming back and going to the EBR, that perhaps having a resolution of council would just reinforce our concerns and further support his comments that will be coming. Perhaps Clinton can elaborate further and better than I am.
Okay, Clint, would you like to comment?
No, other than what Councillor Dobryn said, is certainly anytime that you can have a resolution in addition to comments submitted by staff, that always provides more weight than if it's just from staff. to sway the province in some regards. So that's one of the reasons why this is being brought forward. So it's for you guys to debate.
Okay. Any other comments or questions?
No, go for it.
Brian?
Thank you, John. Going back, I guess, somewhat to my earlier comments, I think everyone can agree that we are in a housing crisis. And it strikes me that everybody is willing to say what we're not prepared to do to help the situation. In my mind, we should be figuring out ways to help the situation instead of saying, no, I'm not going to do that. Sorry. But what are we going to do to help the situation? And in my mind, that's what this motion does. It absolutely pushes back at the province and says, nope, we're not going to do these things. We don't care. We're not going to do that. What are you going to do is the question I think we should be answering. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Okay, I'm not seeing any. I'll call the question. Is anyone opposed?
Sorry, John. Okay. Clint has his hand up there. I think he wants to berate me about something, I'm sure.
Yep. Okay, Clint, go ahead.
I have to take a little exception to the way that Councillor Milne worded that. This isn't saying what we're not willing to do. This is simply saying what you're proposing isn't going to work. And that maybe we need to come up with a better idea. I'm all for coming up with better ideas. This isn't one of them as far as I'm concerned. This, as I said before, I don't think the problem is with planning itself. Sure, we can improve. There's no question we can improve and do things more efficiently at times. But the overall problem is more of a labor force issue, in my opinion. And there's so many other facets to when homes get built, from planning all the way to the other end of the line of inspections and all of that stuff, that it's not, and then you get into affordability and costs and et cetera, that it's not reasonable to say this one little aspect is going to be the fix to all your woes. If you read my report, I also attached the Affordable Housing Task Force recommendations, and there's quite a number of them in there. There's over 50 of them, I believe. And this is one small part of it. There's a whole other slew of things that should be taken into consideration that this doesn't do. What this to me is a very hard-handed approach at one small aspect of it, when they need to be looking at it a little more comprehensively, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you. Barbara?
I may just follow up. I think the biggest concern that I hear from our planner, as well as from what I've read, is that this will not address the housing crisis. There are avenues within this that we are quite willing to consider, but that arbitrarily, putting the cost on the taxpayer for development. We're already working cooperatively with developers. I think we're working quite well with the developers. And as Clinton mentioned earlier, we haven't held up the process. In fact, we have, been open to their requests for MZOs and negotiating those terms, but that the developer has his hands tied because of trades, labor, costs, and ability to build more than 200 homes a year. So thank you for Council for considering this resolution. See where it goes.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments before we go to the vote?
I just Michael here.
Yeah, go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, just listening to everybody, I understand about the housing crisis and everything, but I do believe that we have a planner for a reason, to make sure that we're looking after, dotting the I's and crossing the T's, that there's going to be no hidden surprises. I mean, next term of council, they don't want anything that that we made mistakes on to deal with. We've had some in our past 4 years, so I think when we have a very thorough planner, that we need to respect him, and if he's not totally that he wants this for us to help him, I think it's something that we should do. So that's my 2 cents.
Okay, thanks, Michael. Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands up. Brian.
Yeah, thank you, John. Just one small point here. Well, it's not that small. I want to be crystal clear. I am not being critical of our planning department here in Southgate. We have an excellent planner. We do an excellent job. But I think the point of the report from the province is that the planning process across the province, and I would suggest primarily in the large urban centers, there is a problem, a huge problem. And we don't have that problem here in Southgate, or even probably in Grey County for that matter. We just don't, because we have, a lot closer tie to the developers, as Councillor Dobryn pointed out, and we do work very well with our developers and our planning department. So I am absolutely not trying to be critical of our planning department here in Southgate, or indeed anywhere in Grey County for that matter. But I think if we step back and take a look at the larger, broader picture and read that report from the province, there are some very real systemic problems in the planning process in Ontario. But again, primarily in the large urban centers. So I'll leave it at that. I just wanted to be sure that nobody thought I was being critical of our planner. Absolutely not. Because he's a loyal Leafs fan. So I can't be critical. So that's all. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Not seeing anything else. We'll call the question then. Is anyone opposed to this motion? Okay, Brian is. Lindsay, do you want to do a recorded vote on this?
Yes, please. I will go ahead then. So recorded vote for correspondence consent number 12.3.5, the Town of Mulmer resolution regarding the More Homes for Everyone Act. Councillor Frew?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Milne?
Nay.
Councillor Rice?
Yes.
Councillor Shipston?
Yes.
Councillor Dobryn?
In favor.
Councillor Shearson?
Yes.
Mayor Woodbury?
Yes.
By a vote of 6 to 1, that's carried.
Okay, thank you. We have no closed session consent. So we'll go to the county report. We've had a presentation from, or a delegation from the Saugeen Valley Children's Safety Village meeting or two before. And so we passed a motion at the last meeting donating, I think it was around $16,000 to the fund. It was really nice to see the pictures that they had showed. It also involved our fire department and our firefighters that were there participating and helping out with it. So although this is over, I guess, between Durham and Hanover, it greatly affects us. So and we're greatly involved. So I think if we could think of that come, grant time or whatever, to help out a little bit, it would be good. It must have been delegation Thursday, because we had it took up probably over half the meeting. We had a few. Had good discussion on our climate change action plan, and I guess the next step is the county one will be coming around to each of the municipalities and doing a presentation and explaining things. They're going to contact staff first and see if we can't tie the action plans together. There's, like has been said before, no sense reinventing the wheel. We've got updates from Bruce Power on a lot of the things that they're doing there, as well as updates on the Clean Energy Frontier program. And that was tied pretty much to Bruce and what the things that are going on there. Just going through some of the other stuff. There was some house cleaning like we have done about the election. We received the Climate Change Task Force's report, and there was a report from about the early years childcare funding and strategy and how that was going to the transfer payments. And it's a Canada-wide thing. And then we had some closed sessions things. Anything you wanted to add, Brian?
Oh, you've done a great job. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions? Because Brian looks like he could answer them. Nope. Okay. Members' privilege. I'll kick it off by saying that was a good turnout of council at Maple Fest and great turnout from the public. I never did hear the final numbers, but just anecdotally, it seemed like at least normal numbers, if not more. And the weather was enough to keep people moving and not bad enough to scare them away. So it was a good day. So yeah, anyone else have any good news or celebration stuff they'd like to add? Okay. Next there's no closed meeting stuff. So we have a motion moved by Jason, seconded by Michael, our confirming bylaw. Any discussion on it? Okay, Lindsay, if you do that vote, please.
Thank you, Mayor Woodbury. Recorded vote called for the confirming bylaw. Councillor Dobryn?
In favor?
Councillor Shearson?
Yes.
Councillor Frew?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Milne?
Yay.
Mayor Woodbury?
Yes.
Councillor Rice?
Yes.
Councillor Shipston?
Yes.
By a vote of 7-0, that's carried.
Okay, thank you. And I'm going to surprise everyone. We have a motion to adjourn that's moved by Brian. So one of these times before the end of this term, I think I'll call for a recorded vote on that just to see. So thanks everybody, and have a great weekend. You can start now if you want, but most people will wait.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thanks, John. Take care, all.
See you guys. Yep.
Take care.